Welcome to the Explainer. We've all been there, right? Staring at a screen in some online class, feeling totally and completely disconnected. But then, every once in a while, you get a course that just feels alive. It's engaging, it's interesting. So, what's the secret sauce? What's the real difference between a digital classroom that works and one that just kind of falls flat? Well, we're going to dig into the research and find out. Okay, first things first. Let's get a handle on just how big this whole online learning thing has become. It's really moved from this tiny little corner of education into a massive mainstream movement. And the numbers? Wow, they're staggering.
I mean, just look at this. In the US alone, 7.1 million students are taking at least one online course. But the really important thing here isn't just the number itself, it's the direction it's heading. This figure is climbing year after year, and it's growing way faster than higher education enrollment overall. So this isn't just some fad, it's a fundamental change in how we learn.
And it's not just about more students signing up. The whole perception of online learning has shifted big time. A full 77% of academic leaders, we're talking about the people who are actually running these colleges and universities, now say that the learning outcomes are just as good or even better than traditional face-to-face classes. That is a massive vote of confidence from the people at the top.
This quote really puts it all into perspective, doesn't it? Experts aren't just seeing this as a little trend. They see it as a complete revolution in how we share knowledge. The old walls of, physical distance and rigid schedules, they're basically dissolving, letting us teach and learn anytime, anywhere.
Okay, but let's be real for a second. We've all been in an online course that just felt flat. For all its amazing potential, the virtual classroom comes with a very common, very human set of challenges.
And the research points to a few problems that pop up again and again. Students feel like there's not enough direct supervision. The technology, which is supposed to bring us all together, often just gets in the way. And at the heart of it all is a lack of real communication. It creates this weird paradox where we're surrounded by all these tools to connect, but we end up feeling totally disconnected from everyone. And that feeling of isolation, that's the core issue. This quote nails it. You can't just copy and paste a lecture from a physical classroom onto a screen and expect it to work. The instructor has to actively become a manager of that online space, intentionally working to fight against that feeling of digital distance. So here's the million-dollar question, right? If the main problem is this digital distance, how would you actually build a bridge across it? How do you make a virtual classroom feel genuinely connected and human?
Well, luckily, the research doesn't just point out the problem. It also gives us a pretty powerful solution. And it all boils down to two key ideas that can absolutely transform the online learning experience. The first one is something called teaching presence. Now, that sounds a little academic, but think of it like this. The instructor is the architect of the whole experience. It's about how they intentionally design the course, how they guide the discussions, and how they provide a clear path for the entire learning journey. It's about being seen as the guide. The second key is teaching immediacy. This one is all about perception. It's not just about whether the instructor is available, it's about whether students feel like they are. It's that sense of being accessible and responsive that makes students feel supported, so they don't feel like they're just shouting into an empty void.
So here's how it all comes together. Picture 3 overlapping circles. You've got the virtual environment itself, you've got the student's own engagement, and then you have the instructor's presence and immediacy. The best learning doesn't happen in just one of these areas. No, it happens right there in the sweet spot, that intersection where all 3 of them meet. That's the magic zone. Okay, so presence and immediacy sound great in theory, but what do they actually look like when the rubber meets the road? Let's dive into the instructor's playbook and check out some real, tangible strategies. Let's take online discussions, for example. A great instructor doesn't just post a question and then, disappear. Nope, they design the conversation. They let it run for a whole week so people have time to actually think. They push students to connect the ideas to their own lives. They make sure everyone responds to each other to build that community feel, and they ask for summaries to help lock in the key ideas. The thing is, a successful online instructor has to be so much more than just a lecturer. They have to wear a ton of different hats. They're part course designer, part tech support, part mentor, and yet, even part devil's advocate to get students thinking critically. And maybe most importantly, they act as a kind of counselor.
actively working to help students fight that feeling of being alone online. But out of all the tools in that playbook, one really stands out above the rest: feedback. Giving comments that are both quick and actually helpful is maybe the single most powerful way for an instructor to show both presence and immediacy. It sends a direct message to the student that says, "Hey, I'm here, I see your work, and I'm invested in you."
So let's bring this all home. Why does mastering this stuff, this presence and immediacy, really matter so much in the end? What's the actual impact on the student?
Well, the impact is absolutely profound. When presence and immediacy are low, you get what researchers call a high transactional distance, which is basically a psychological and emotional gap between the student and the instructor. That leads straight to isolation and just surface-level engagement. But when presence is high, that distance shrinks. You create a real sense of community, you get much deeper learning, and way, way happier students.
And look, the academic consensus on this couldn't be clearer. As this summary shows, teaching presence is a huge predictor of student satisfaction, how much they feel they've learned, and that sense of community. To put it simply, it's the secret sauce. It's the critical ingredient for success.
So in the end, great online learning isn't really about the fanciest software or the highest definition video. It's about something way more basic: human connection and intentional design. It's about an instructor who makes a conscious effort to bridge that digital divide. So we'll leave you with this question to chew on. Think back to the absolute best online class you've ever taken. What was that one small thing the instructor did that made it feel truly alive?